Welcome to this Day One conversation. I'm Peter Wallace, and with us today is the Reverend Barbara Brown Taylor. Barbara is the Butman Professor of Religion and Philosophy at Piedmont College in Northeast Georgia. She also serves as an adjunct professor of Christian spirituality at Columbia Theological Seminary in Decatur, Georgia. An ordained Episcopal priest, she is the author of 12 books, including Leaving Church and An Altar in the World. And is a frequent lecturer and preacher at seminaries, churches, and conferences around the country. Barbara, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
A good bit of your time these days is spent in the classroom at Piedmont College. You teach religion and philosophy. What do you hope your students experience during their time in these classes?
I have 16 weeks to haunt them with the questions that matter. And I have two groups of students, those who will only take one religion or philosophy course to graduate, and the majors who will spend more time with me and my colleague, Timothy Lytle. But I also see my job as creating a kind of community they'll remember, a classroom experience they'll remember. I also want them to think learning is worthwhile and something they might continue doing after they have their degrees in hand.
Have you sensed a change in the personalities of students over the years?
I really have, in a number of ways, and some of that's just different waves in enrollment in different colleges. But what I've noticed most of all, because I teach world religions, are young people coming out of public schools who've had best friends who are Buddhist or Muslim or Sikh since first grade. So they're coming in with a much vaster experience, at least, if not knowledge about experience of people from different religions than their own. That was not true 10 years ago.
You also teach occasionally at Columbia Theological Seminary, and I would imagine the students there are much different from the college students you teach. What are your goals with those students?
Those students are pastors. I teach in the Doctor of Ministry program, so I go from 18, 19-year-olds to seasoned pastors, usually. And they go together wonderfully because I go from young to my age. My goal with the pastors, frankly, I don't know if this should be public, but sometimes it's just to give them an easy load. They're worn out, and they arrive at Columbia in the summertime for 2 weeks of solid work, and I try to make sure I do things like require them to observe the Sabbath or require them to take naps. But my goal is to let them experience, again, classroom community, be with each other, because some of them are solo pastors in little towns, and they never get to be with other people who do what they do.
When you were with us 4 weeks ago, we talked a bit about living our faith in more physical ways, as you described in your book, An Altar in the World. It seems as though you're encouraging us to step out of the protective walls of the church and into the wide world of experience in your books. Is that a fair statement?
Well, it is, and I've spent a lot of my time in churches, serving churches and loving churches, but churches that are only about themselves, that are only about church, run out of breath for me. So I'm much more interested in how God is active in the world and in churches as places both to track and talk about and sacramentalize and give voice to that activity. But if all the arrows point in the church door, it just seems to me everybody inside will suffocate.
Leaving Church, your previous book, was a bit controversial because some people assumed you were leaving the church rather than moving on from a church where you served as rector for a number of years. It was a very honest and open description of life as a parish priest. What do you hope readers take away from that memoir?
I hope they read it. It was amazing to me, the reactions I got to the title alone. It really helped me see there's a huge bruise, at least in mainline churches, that even a title like that can be taken as offense. Most people who went on to read it would say things across the board, like, I've retired, I loved it for every minute I did it, but I've retired and I have the same identity problems. I hear from pharmacists and bankers who say this is a midlife book. It's not about ordained ministry at all. And then I've heard from people who are being ordained next Saturday who say, thank you for showing me what to avoid. It's been a Rorschach.
Barbara Brown Taylor, thanks for talking with us.
My pleasure, Peter. Thanks for asking me.